just to get us started, was there a pivotal moment in your youth when you decided you wanted to seek a career in music?
You know what? Say that again, man. I'm sorry. I had trouble hearing that.
That's fine. Was there a defining moment in your younger days when you made that decision to seek a career as a musician?
You know, I played classical accordion for 10 years, basically, and that was a great lesson in studying music. And as a young teenager, I started playing Beatles music on the accordion and fell in love with rock and roll through the Beatles. Discovered Motown, the old blues, Stax Volt, the British Invasion, all that great stuff. But I didn't pick up guitar as a hobby until I was 15, and I really, in the mid-'60s in middle America, rock and roll really wasn't a career, even though we loved the Beatles and Hendrix and all those bands. It was really the night I saw Jimi Hendrix as a 17-year-old that I was kind of possessed with the inspiration, I guess, or the calling to be a professional rock musician. It really never occurred to me till that night. And soon after that, I formed my band Grin and hit the road, and make a long story short, headed out to Los Angeles where I started hooking up with Neil Young and David Briggs.
Would you say you were quite an ambitious young fellow in those days?
Well, I guess I was. I felt scared, and I was kind of shy, but when it came to music, I felt like it was my one and only chance at some kind of saving grace in a pretty frightening landscape of growing up. I mean, we had the Cuban Missile War, and it was just, all teenagers are kind of confused and angst-ridden when they're 17 or so, and it just seemed like my ticket to something better, but I realized I knew nothing about the music industry. So I would always sneak backstage and ask musicians for advice. And fortunately, when I did that with Neil Young, it led to a long friendship and working relationship with Neil and his fabulous producer, David Briggs, who, when we got to Los Angeles, moved me into his home and became like my big brother and mentor musically growing up.
I was a real fan of the band Grin, and their albums really do stand up well today. What do you think was the main catalyst that prevented that band from being as successful as it probably deserved to be?
Well, it's pretty simple. No matter how you want to analyze it, good reviews are just words, and we got a lot of those. We played a lot of great shows, had a great experience as a young band, living and working with our crew in Los Angeles and Virginia with our two bases where we played all over the country. But we didn't have any hit records, and you can't really sell a lot of albums without radio play and hit records, and we just didn't get enough. We weren't on the radio enough to generate enough sales for the companies to keep letting us record. And after 4 albums, we basically, did a farewell concert at Kennedy Center and tried to go out with some style and class, and I carried on as a solo artist. I was really wasn't what I wanted to do, but it seemed like the only path forward available.
Now, you were still a teenager when you got recruited to work with Neil Young. Did the enormity of that moment sink into you at that young age?
Not really. I was so kind of taken aback by being asked to play piano, which was an instrument I was unfamiliar with. And David and Neil felt that because of my 10 years of accordion studies, I could come up with some simple piano parts that would work. So I was so distracted by that challenge that it was probably a good thing, because I spent every waking moment practicing piano somewhere, preparing for that record and working on the songs to come up with some simple parts that fit. And David Briggs, who I'd been living with for a year, was like my big brother. Since he produced the project, it was just more of a family affair. I my band Grin had been the house band at the Topanga Canyon Corral, our local bar there. So Neil would jam with us, and I got to see Neil regularly with David. So there was a bit of a camaraderie and a comfort level over that year after the Gold Rush album was made that was really helpful.
Did you feel torn between two jobs at that stage, still working with Grin and keeping up with your work with Neil as well?
No, I've never felt really torn. I mean, I'm been so obsessive as a musician, and I started so young. I'm always doing my own music, and it's nice to take a break and not be the leader. If you're making great music with good friends, it's a great break to not always have to be the boss or the leader, and I come back to my own music, I think, a little refreshed and recharged from that kind of break, and it's a different focus that's fun as a musician, to not always have to, sing every lead and play every solo.
Now, one of the great Neil Young albums you played on was Tonight's the Night, and the subject matter of that album is well documented. Do you remember much about the mood in the studio at that time, considering the subject matter of the songs?
Well, we just a couple of things come to mind. It was a concept record of recording live while the band learned the songs, trying to get a really raw, emotional take on songs that were not that familiar. Neil wanted to show people how it is before everything's produced and worked out. And we also got together at dinner time and shot pool and just hung out, had a little tequila and relaxed, and just kind of commiserated about the loss of our friends Danny Whitten and Bruce Berry. And usually it wasn't until midnight or later in the night that we'd start recording, and we usually just did mini sets of the songs from tonight to night, kind of a live set show, and then take breaks. It was just a casual but intense long night into the morning, and then we'd start up again the next evening with some pool, and just kind of eased into it every night up till we kind of got sucked into doing live performances every night.
Now, you recorded with Neil again in later years on what was considered one of his most unusual albums, Trans. What was the feeling of that record?
Well, that was another incredible experience with the first real vocoders and synthesizer, synclavier synth that Neil got, and he learned how to program quite well and made a brilliant album with these machines. And we also went to Hawaii and did some more kind of earthy stuff as a whole band, the Trans band, and the album was a combination of both of those. And the tour was 6 weeks in Europe. But it was fun to have a vocoder set on and be singing and having Neil Young's synthesized voice coming out of your mouth.
Mm.
There's a lot of beautiful, strange new technology that to mix in with kind of the old funky school rock that we all had, as rock sensibility we all had. It was again a very, to me, groundbreaking and creative adventure.
Now, you mentioned earlier you weren't seeking a solo career after the split of Grin. Did it take you time to feel comfortable in that role?
Yeah, I'm a band person, and all the bands I tour with, even as a solo artist, I like to get a lot of input from the musicians and have it really feel like a band, a group effort, which it has been. But Grin was, a real journey, special journey for me, and it was really difficult to accept the reality that, in the music industry, if you don't have some commercial success, at some point they're not going to keep giving you record deals. So it was a real hard learning experience. David Briggs was an amazing help. He produced my first solo album, and then half of the second one, quite tough. And so David helped me through it, and Neil was encouraging, and Art Linson, my manager. I mean, the guys in Grin were great. They didn't hold it against me to carry on as a solo artist. A&M Records didn't want to give Grin another album contract, and we couldn't get a deal anywhere else. So we just did a farewell concert at Kennedy Center. But it's just part of the music industry. I mean, look, they're in it to make money, and if you don't give them a hit record, eventually they're not going to give you a record deal.
Yeah. Did you find your songwriting was changing once you started writing for solo work as compared to Grin? Were you finding yourself writing a different type of song?
Not really. I just wrote what I felt and what came out. I certainly, Bob Berbick was a great singer, and I wrote a lot for both our voices. But, I think it was more a question of being a little more mature and tackling some different subject matter, but it was still kind of just a normal progression. I probably would have written a lot of those same songs had Grin still been around.
Now, one of my all-time favourite live albums is Night After Night, and by that time, were you finding yourself quite a comfortable live performer? It certainly sounds that way.
Oh yeah, I was comfortable playing live, very early on. The first year, I was a little shy and nervous, and we were opening for all these great acts. That's when I decided to go learn how to do a backflip while I played guitar, just to do a nice visual for the crowd, which went over big. But soon after that, I got fairly extroverted and very comfortable moving and dancing to the music and just kind of letting the spirit of the music dictate, throwing myself around. So it was just briefly as early on in Grin that I was a little shy on stage, but I got over that pretty quick. By Night After Night, I'd been on the road almost, 10 years or more, so I was pretty familiar with the live environment and very, very comfortable in front of an audience. It seems to be musically where I feel most at home.
Now, let's talk about your connection with Bruce Springsteen. Where did you first meet Bruce?
It's hard to say. I know in 1970 we were both on an audition night for Bill Graham in San Francisco. He had a band, Steel Mill, and my band, Grin, was there. I don't know if we even met, but I was aware of Bruce, and we grew up in the Northeast, went through the same clubs all the time. So I heard a lot about Bruce, and I admired him from an early age. And I was so wrapped up in my own stuff, it was really, let's see, well, I did go to see the E Street Band in I think 75, just before my first solo gig as a solo artist with my first album and band at the Bottom Line. I saw Bruce in the E Street Band. And I think that was the first time I'd seen him since Steel Mill in 1970. But I used to go see him at the Roxy in L.A. in the sports arena and became a big fan and admirer and, just really respected what he did and how he was doing it.
Now, you mentioned you're very much a band person, and your solo career was well and truly established by the time you joined the E Street Band, so there was no tentativeness about going back into somebody else's band again?
No, I've spent so much time doing my own music, and I started so young then. And no matter what bands I've been in with Neil Young, Ringo Starr's all-star bands, when you get this giant, with bands like that, you get a lot of public attention, but the reality is the tours end. And it's nice to not go home and wonder what you're going to do next. For me, it's go home and write your own songs, make your next record, and go play. So it's kind of a logical, natural progression, and I have to say I really kind of feel re-inspired to come back to my own music after a great tour with some of the amazing artists I've been blessed to play with.
Sure. You were part of one of the biggest tours of the 80s with the Born in the USA period, but you hadn't played on the album, so was there a bit of extra pressure on you there? Did you have to go through a crash course in the material?
Yeah, but, the band was very helpful, and Bruce was very helpful. The pressure was really because I didn't get the job till about 4 weeks before opening night. I don't think Bruce and Steve really sorted out that Steve had to go and do his own thing. So it was just a question of time. It took me 20 shows to get to where I really felt like I started having most of the music internalized, because, there's a massive amount of songs, great songs Bruce has written, and we played a lot of them and changed the show a lot. So, but everyone was supportive, and again, it was to me the ultimate challenge, because I love being in bands. Is to me it's just a question of time. If I love the music and I love the people, which is the case with all the bands I've been with, fortunately, then I know it's just hard work and a question of time before I'm doing something that fits and works, I hope.
Suddenly there you're also all of a sudden playing massive stadiums to huge audiences. As a musician, did it take some time for you to adapt to that environment?
Well, I was lucky. I had quite a bit of experience already. In the 70, I think it was 79, or might even been 70, I think it was 79, I did a stadium tour of Europe with The Who.
Oh, right.
All over Europe. AC/DC, the Stranglers, The Who, and the Nils Lofgren band played all over Europe. So I got really familiar and comfortable in the stadiums. And then again in 1983 on the Trans tour, the majority of that 6 weeks in Europe was once again stadiums. So by the time we did it with Bruce in 85, I'd been to a lot of those places already. And I was familiar with that environment. And it wasn't, I don't think it, the period of adjustment that Bruce and the E Street Band went through, I had already gone through.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the job security that you have working with Bruce keeps you refreshed for tackling your own work. Does it also give you more freedom in terms of being able to conduct your solo career the way you want to?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The job security that you have with your work with Bruce, does that give you the freedom to be able to conduct your own solo career in the way that you wish?
Well, I mean, we don't, when a tour ends with Bruce, we don't, I don't presume to expect or demand or guess that, 4 years later, Bruce is going to put the E Street Band back together again. That's not something I think you can count on or expect, even though it's a great band. I mean, he's free to go do other projects, and he's done many of them. I'm always grateful when the E Street Band plays, but it's not something, most people just don't plan 4 or 5 years down the road, really. They just carry on with your own thing. And the main thing I've gotten with working with bands like Neil's bands or Ringo's or Bruce's is confidence. It reminds me that even though the music industry doesn't really have a place for me, I haven't had a record deal in 14 years. I belong with the musicians. I belong in the bands. It's something I love. It's like a calling for me, and it kind of gives me a lot of confidence that I certainly wouldn't get if I depended on hit records, which I've never had, or the music industry, which is very hard on artists, I think, a lot of times. And I've just found, the last 14 years without a record company, it's just been a great time for me to make music I care about. I don't need anyone's permission. If I feel like I've done something special, I can release it and share it. Yeah, the numbers are smaller, but I don't have anybody I have to worry about kind of co-authoring projects with.
Mm.
And for instance, this new project, The Loner, Neil Sings Neil, where I've sung my favorite Neil Young songs, it really wasn't my idea. It was my manager's idea, Hanson, and I sung the songs for 2 weeks before I decided it might be a good record. I realized it had to be live with no production. I felt if it was going to be special or work, I had to sing everything live in my home on a piano or a guitar with no production and no overdubs. And it turned out to really be a great project, and I feel good about it.
And it's the kind of project that probably no record company would allow you to do either.
Yeah, but again, I haven't worried about a record company for 14 years, so I don't have to even worry about what anyone else thinks. I mainly have to come up with something I feel is good music, and I got some good feedback from my manager Anson. My wife Amy is a great sounding board. She loves music, and she's not a professional. She's not into the business. She doesn't care about it. Actually finds it quite humorous to prophetic on occasion. She's just all about the music. So I get some honest feedback, and of course, first thing to do is do something that I feel is important or has some worth, and it has some emotional value. And so I waited quite a while until I got versions of these 15 songs. I was hoping to get 10, but I felt all 15 had a quality to them that was special. They were all live in the home, so we thought we'd share them and see what people think.
Well, with Neil having such a huge catalogue of songs to choose from, what criteria did you use in choosing the songs to cover on that record?
You know what, I asked Anson to help burn some CDs with like my favorite 25 or 30 to start with. And then I didn't record or even go into the home studio for about 2 weeks. I just sang to my dogs, to my cats, in my living room, the piano, on the guitar. I just sang like my favorite 20 or 25 songs. I didn't really attack any one song too hard. I just sang them. And what happened was over the course of 2 weeks, some of them started, feeling like they just started evolving into something that felt a little more my own. Some beautiful songs that I was hoping to make work didn't. And I mean, I sang them, but it just had a karaoke vibe I didn't like. And I wanted them to have something special. Like I felt like maybe I made the song my own a little bit. And so I waited a couple weeks, and these were kind of the 15 that seemed to be that way. And in fact, there were a couple like Harvest Moon was one of my favorite songs, and I didn't even think I should try that. And it was my wife Amy who really thought that was a mistake, and that knowing how much I loved it, it belonged on the record. So I took a shot at it, not really having high hopes, and it turned out to be one of the better vocals, I think, live I've ever done in the studio. So it was a very organic, easy process, but I did stay out of the studio, and I didn't record anything for a couple of weeks. I just sang these songs and to see which ones kind of made the most sense emotionally, and I didn't force songs I couldn't make feel right. I just kept singing them and went with the ones that felt the best.
Now, you were an early participant in the internet. Nowadays, it's standard practice for an artist to have their own website, but you were right up there in the early days. How beneficial a tool has it been for you?
I'm sorry, man. I'm losing you there. What's that?
You were one of the first artists to have their own website, to be involved in the internet. Nowadays, it's standard practice for musicians to have their own website. How beneficial a tool has the internet been for you?
Well, it's been the only daylight I found. I mean, once record companies, way back in 82, 83 on my Wonderland record, all the companies, I got dropped from MCA, and all the companies pretty much told me I was a dinosaur, and that there was no record deals for me. And it was really thanks to Bruce hiring me in the East Street Band that the companies got interested again. And it really wasn't because of me; it was more because Bruce thought I belonged in his band, so they thought, oh, maybe there's something here. And I got a few more deals after that. And but by '95, I got off my last deal, and it was just a miserable experience. And I realized at that point I needed my freedom. So the internet's really been the only daylight I found. I've got a beginner's guitar school, and I offer guitar lessons online. I offer free downloads and video download from a live acoustic show. And there's a lot of good stuff that I'm proud of that I can make available through the internet, but certainly without that tool, there's a lot of people that I couldn't stay in touch with.
Tell us a little bit more.
It's been a great thing, even though I don't know how to work a computer very well. At least I can read emails and the listserv and answer people. And again, this beginner's guitar school has been really cool because so many people think if they don't have talent or rhythm, they can't play guitar for fun, and that's not true. You just need a good teacher and a little time. So I'm trying to be that person to help them have some fun learning guitar.
Right. Tell us a little bit more about those online guitar lessons. What actually is the procedure? How does it work?
Well, basically, I went around. I did the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, the first one. I've done a couple other ones, and I found out when I'm in a room with people that want to learn, I'm quite a good teacher, and I enjoy it. And so many people over the last 40 years, this is my 40th year on the road, have come up to me and kind of said they'd love to play for fun, but they have no talent or rhythm, so they're not allowed to. And I realized, well, that's not true. You just need a good teacher. If you love music, it's a great hobby. It's very therapeutic. So I talked to some local instructors and found out they charge about $40-50 an hour. So I thought if I take an hour lesson, you could download it for half of that, $20, and then it's yours forever. And much like, I'm still the swing man in the E Street Band. I've learned pedal steel, bottleneck, dobro, lap steel. I'm a beginner, but I have a lot of good teaching techniques I've learned from the accordion and the guitar over the years. And so once you have the hour lesson in your computer, you can watch the whole hour. I usually tell people to, watch it and then take it 5 minutes at a time or one lick at a time. And once you understand what I'm showing you on a scale or a lick, then stop it, pause it, and whether you want to practice 20 minutes or 2 hours, just learn that part and then go back to the next part. Also, something that is critical is you have to enjoy it. And playing guitar is like gymnastics for your hands. It hurts, it cramps your hands, it gets frustrating. So right from lesson one, I've tried to show people things they can do with one finger that doesn't take any practice, that they can play along with me and feel like they're creating music immediately. And I always suggest you finish with something that's fun like that, and make sure before you get too frustrated doing the hard, you go off and have some fun. So keep yourself engaged and keep it a pop.
Do you find sometimes?
Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here. Do you find in the teaching process sometimes you're still learning yourself? You can teach yourself new things?
Oh, yeah. Let me check if someone else is using the line. By revisiting what I've learned, it's very educational for me, and it's fun. It's like a stroll down memory lane. I'm still different solos and stuff, like that's a nice thing. For instance, on the accordion, I use the metronome a lot. I learned that to practice phrases I couldn't play at all at a very slow speed, and then over the course of many months, faster tempo. And I still do that with, even now with the E Street Band, I'm doing this pretty lengthy solo, and because of the night, I'll work up a lick, and if I can't play it at the right speed yet, I know that if I just practice it for a few weeks at a slower speed, even if it's just 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there, maybe in 2 weeks it's something I'll be able to play at the right speed and add to the solo. And if not, I don't get upset about it because I know that that's part of the journey. I mean, you can't play every single thing you hear because I got short, thick, strong hands. They're not very long. So you just kind of give yourself permission to explore and experiment, which to me is the exciting part of learning, because for all the things you wind up not being able to do, if you keep looking to learn, you'll find a lot of surprises you can do, and it's just it's very medicinal and healing, actually, the learning process, if you balance some fun with the hard stuff. So that's what I'm trying to do as a teacher at the beginner's school.
Sure. Just back to the E Street Band, you replaced Little Steven in that band. When he returned to the fold, did your role alter in any way?
When what happened?
When Little Steven returned back into the E Street Band, did your role in the band change in any way?
A little bit. I mean, basically it got to be a lot more fun in the sense that, I don't have a high, rough rock voice. And Steve has this beautiful, high, rough voice, kind of like Nick and Keith.
Yeah.
Him and Bruce have this great. So actually, it was kind of nice, not to take turns with Patty, who can sing beautifully high, rough, gentle, and she's got it all. But still, for me, it was nice to kind of not have to try to do these great harmonies now that Steve was there to do them. It was also nice to get to, because Steve would play some of the main guitar parts he wrote, to get kind of become this swing man and learn some pedal steel, some bottleneck, some dobro, lap steel. It was all of a sudden I was carrying all these new cool instruments, and even though I was a beginner, it was kind of neat, to have these new sounds to add to this band I've been in for a long time. So to me, it just made the band better, and it made my job a bit easier and more fun to have Steve back in the band.
What would be your key to survival in the music industry for as long as you have?
Well, key to survival. Just find a way to be inspired by the music you're playing. Don't ever get too far away from inspired music. For business or money or opportunity, none of that really matters if you wind up playing uninspired music.
Mm.
I've been very blessed not to ever really have to do that. And also you can't take yourself too seriously. And for me, anyway, I have to give myself permission. I call it going fishing, to just let the energy of the audience and the music inspire you to take chances, knowing that sometimes taking chances you're going to make mistakes. And that's why I love a live audience, because they sense you're looking for something special, and they're very forgiving, and it doesn't really interrupt the groove as long as it's an honest, inspired effort to find something special, and you're kind of, you're not playing it safe. But mainly you just can't lose sight of the music, and you got to keep that part of it inspiring as you progress through your business, which can get pretty, disillusioning or nasty at times.
And just before I let you go, Nils, what's on your books for the rest of this year? Anything coming up you'd like to tell us about?
Well, other than, right now I've got 8 days at home before we go back on the road. I'm going to try to take some more guitar lessons. I'm real happy about the new Neil Young CD of his songs, and I hope that, I don't know exactly when the tour will end, but whenever it does, I'll take a nice break with my family and then get back to writing songs of my own for another record, maybe plan an acoustic tour. I've been wanting for so long to get down to Australia to play, and it's just so far away, it's hard to get a promoter to line up a handful of cities to bring me all that way, but I'm hopeful that'll happen in the future. And I keep putting out things on my website. I've got there's a DVD, Live Acoustic with Friends. It really came out great. And those are the kind of shows I've been doing in Europe a lot lately, and it's the kind of show I'd like to bring down to Australia if I can find a promoter that's interested.
That would be great. Would be great indeed. Nils, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. It's been fantastic catching up with you.
Yeah, I hope we get down your way again and do some shows for you, and including some of my own. I really appreciate you letting people know about the website and the new CD.
I'll certainly do all of that without a doubt, and we'll look forward to seeing you down here. It's been a while.
Beautiful.
Thanks a lot, Nils.
All right, well, thanks for the call. All the best to you there in Australia, and say hi to all the fans down there. They've been great over the years.
Fantastic. You take care.
All the best. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.